My name is Leander Lacy. I'm the owner and founder of Lacy Consulting Services. I am a wildlife biologist, an environmental social scientist, and a community engagement expert as well. One of the projects that we love to talk about at Lacy Consulting is a project that we did in the Bahamas. And in that project, we were looking at kind of the analyze and adapt phase. The idea was to improve or increase the number of marine protected areas within the Bahamas. However, in order to do that, we had to test some assumptions. And one of the assumptions was that maybe the fishers would be possibly against the idea of harsher laws and policies in order to increase enforcement of these marine protected areas. And so what I did with the team was to go into the Bahamas and do interviews with fishers, law enforcement, and conservation groups to both understand what that meant and also look at the level of trust between fishers, law enforcement, and conservation groups. By the end of that project, what we learned ultimately was that the fishers were actually completely okay with increased laws and policies in order to have more protection. And we also learned about the levels of trust and where it had degraded between fishers, law enforcement, and conservation groups, and how we would begin to improve that. So looking at the analyze and adapt phase, after we completed this project, we then began to look at the strategy. Now that we understood that fishers were actually okay with this, one of the things that they were going to do was spend 2 years of education for fishers to help them understand why it was important to do this. What this actually did in adapting their strategy was that it actually saved them about 2 years worth of work, but almost $100,000 in their project overall. And so by looking at the analyze and adapt, testing assumptions and making sure they were right, understanding how to prioritize funding, they were able to again reduce their time and funding for this project and advance it pretty quickly. They're actually able to work now, instead of using that money to address fishers, they're able to address directly with local government and national government. And since then, they have gone on to continue to increase the number of marine protected areas in the Bahamas. The conservation standards have been absolutely critical in helping us to understand how we might integrate trust throughout the process. We understand that the work that we do is dependent on behaviors and on people and communities, and one major factor of that is trust. And so by having a framework like the conservation standards that's globally accepted, we have the ability to make massive change by integrating something as simple as trust more effectively into the conservation standards process.